Welcome to this lecture. So far, we have seen introduction to data link layer, wherein we have seen the design issues as well as the functionalities. In addition to that, we have also seen the services provided by DLA to network layer. So today we'll see the framing, one of the functionalities or the prominent functionality. Here we know that data link layer provides services to network layer and takes or accepts services of the physical layer. Now we know that the physical layer is responsible for physical or the transmission of the bits. While in the transmission there could have been some errors, and those errors could be of two types. Either the number of bits are changed or the value of the bit is changed. For example, if 101 was sent, it may be received as 1010, where 3 bits were sent, they received as 4 bits. That is one error, one sort of error. Or 101 was sent and received as simply 10, one bit was lost. So that is deletion or insertion. Next, if 101 was sent by the sender, it might be received as 111. So 5 was sent, 7 was received. So that's a change in the bit value. So both these are errors. Now it is the duty of the data link layer to correct those errors if occurred. Now for those error management and rest of the functionalities, the prominent duty done by DLL is framing. We have seen previously how framing is done actually in with the help of diagrams. Now the basic steps here is whatever the data that is received, that will be divided into discrete frames. Now in the case of data received from network layer, the packets will be divided into frames, and the headers and trailers will be attached. Now in addition to that, the DLL has to compute what is called as the checksum for each individual frame, and that checksum will be added to the header. So previously we have seen if this is the packet, now the packet may be divided if it is longer than the frame payload, and this is how headers, payload and trailer is the structure of the actual frame. This is frame, this is packet. Now the whatever frames that have been generated out of this packet, the payload part will be checksummed, and that checksum will be put into header. So this is the structure you discussed here. Now when the same frame is received at the receiver also calculates the checksum for the payload part or the overall frame as well. And if that checksum may be calculated for the payload, or that may be calculated for the overall frame, so one single fashion is maintained at both sender and receiver. So when the receiver calculates the checksum, it compares it with the checksum received in the header, which was sent by the sender, obviously. And if there is some difference, it comes to know that there is some error. So errors can be detected in this way. Now receiver has to deal with the error. Receiver can only detect there has been some error. So that's why framing is only not breaking up the packets or simply combining the frames to form a packet. Framing is not that simple as it seems. It has got other difficulties as well. The methods used for framing are as follows. There are 4 methods prominently. One is byte count, next is flag bytes with byte stuffing, flag bits with bit stuffing. The difference here is only bytes and bits. Otherwise the logic mostly remains same. And the last is physical layer coding violations. We'll see individually. The first is byte count, which is very simple. Here the sender simply calculates the number of bytes in the frame payload or that overall frame and puts them into the header part. Let me repeat. The sender will calculate how many bytes are there in the overall frame, and those bytes will be put into the header. So at the receiver, it becomes very easy. When the header information is read, the receiver will simply know that those many bytes the frame is long. We'll see with the example basically. So this is the example. Here, this is the structure that you can, which part A of the figure tells what are the different frames which are sent by the sender. And in figure B, you are getting what are the frames which are received at the receiver. So let us see. This is the first frame, as we can see, and the first header part is having the value of 5. That means there are 5 bytes in the first frame. Obviously, the first byte is taken up by the header information. So rest of the bytes, that is 5 minus 1, 4 bytes will be there into the payload part. In all, 1 plus 4 is 5, and that is the length of the overall frame. So this is the payload part, and this is the header information. So first frame ends at this particular byte, value 4. The next, once again, starts with that header information, once again 5. So last next 4 bytes are there into that frame. So this byte including the next 4 bytes is frame 2, and so on. So if there are some errors while the frames were sent towards the recipient, the receiver, what could be the situation? Let us see with one example. Fortunately, the first frame was received as it was, so there was not any error. Unfortunately, while the transmission of the second frame, the header information which contained 5, it changed to 7. So 101 was sent where it was received as 111. 1 bit was changed, and that's why 5 became 7. So the consequence of that thing, how it impacted the receiver. Now for the receiver, there is no way to identify what was the correct way. Simply it read the header value 7 and wrongly concluded. Wrongly means actually in practical, from the sender's perspective, if you see, it wrongly calculated, but by the logic, receiver was correct. So header information was 7. So the next 6 bytes it had taken to be the part of the second frame. So up till 0, it calculated the second frame. Rather, the frame was to conclude at 9, but it erroneously taken the next 2 bytes which were of the third frame into the second frame itself. That is the problem. And the further consequences of this error were now, by the receiver's calculation, the second frame ended here, and obviously the next part was the header information for the third frame, and that was 1. So let me tell you one thing. In the case of byte count, the frame length couldn't be 0 or 1. Why? Because obviously there you can know that it could never be 0, because that would not be a frame itself. So if the value is 1, that means there will be at the max 1 byte, and that is taken up by the header information itself. So there is no payload part. So that is also not not a proper value for a frame length, and that's why that is not a proper frame. So header at this part can identify that as this is not a proper frame length, there could have been some error, but it has not got any proper way to identify where exactly that error is. So that is the problem with this byte count method, and consequently the rest of the frames couldn't be even detected properly. So that is the problem. We'll see How that is taken care of in the next method? So the next method is flag bytes with byte stuffing. That has to be stuffing, STU. So this particular method tackles the problem that was just seen in the previous method, byte count. It does so by appending a special bytes at the beginning and at the end of the frame to be sent. They are called as flag bytes, and they are same. Now we'll see with the example rather. This is the frame to be sent from header to trailer along with the payload part. This is the overall frame. Now to which the flag bytes will be attached. That could be one byte or multiple bytes. It's a proper sequence, individual sequence, some predetermined sequence that is called as flag byte. So whenever this is sent and this is received at the receiver properly, when the receiver sees that this is a particular sequence of bytes, it knows that this is the start of a new frame. On the other hand, whenever the same sequence is re-encountered, it comes to know that this is the end of the current frame. But the situation can be trickier sometimes. What happens? We'll see with 4 such cases. By some chance, it may so happen that the terminating byte sequences may also occur in the payload field, because ultimately the flag bytes will be a random sequence, means that will be having some value, but that is a combination of ones and zeros that could be present in the payload part itself or right from header to trailers anywhere. So in the first case, A flag B, that's the original frame content right from here to here. Now we are not showing the start and end flag bytes here. Only we are concentrating what will happen if the flag appears to be in this part. Now in the first case, when the flag byte is present in the frame structure, the duty which is done by the sender is for separating out or escaping the actual meaning of flag in the payload. Now what will happen if that is not escaped? If the receiver receives that part here, now this is the frame which is received at the receiver. There is one flag A, flag B, and flag. The flags, the starting and end, as just told, not shown. Now for the receiver, there is no way it will identify there is a flag that's the start of a new frame. It will encounter this as the frame content. Now when the next flag is received, it will wrongly conclude that the frame has ended here, which is actually not. So that is ending here. So to remove this problem, while sending the frame, the sender will include one escape byte before the flag byte. So when the receiver encounters a flag byte which is preceded by one escape byte, it comes to know that this is not the terminating flag byte, it's a data part, and it discards the escape part, and then it concludes that the frame is the start is flag, then is A, then flag, which is the data part, because the escape was preceding that. Now that is discarded, and then B, and there will be one flag here. That's the end part. So A flag B is taken as the receiver, which is the correct frame which was sent. Similarly, if now the escape byte is there in the data part, that is also escaped with the same escape byte. So in short, if there is flag or escape which is found in the frame part, that will be preceded with one escape byte, one for each individual such byte. So this is also discarded. So A escape B, which is the correct frame which was sent. Now in the next case, when the two sequences escape flag, if they are found in that way, what will happen? So each of that part, as just told, will be escaped. So that's why, otherwise, if that was not escaped, what will happen? The sender would simply discard this and it will take A flag B, which is not the frame. Rather, this has to be taken as the data and this has also to be taken as the data. That's why each individual escape and flag will be escaped with the escape byte. Escape, this escape is escaped with escape escape, and this flag is escaped with escape flag. So these two will be discarded and A escape flag B will be taken, which is the correct send frame. Similarly, for this last case, there are two escapes and they are each individually escaped with one escape, and where this will be discarded and rest is the sent frame. So this is the beauty of flag bytes with byte stuffing, wherein the receiver can correctly identify the start and end of frame. The next is flag bits with bit stuffing. Here we'll first see what that method is and then we'll know how that has got one advantage over the previous method. Now, in short, logically it does the same thing as is done in flag bytes with byte stuffing, but in the case of bytes, it stuffs only single bits, and that's why it is different. So this is first developed for high level data link control HDLC protocol, and the special pattern that is used for delimiting the frames is 0x7e. So this is 7 and this is hexadecimal E. 0x7e, hexadecimal 7e is the special pattern that we must remember. It's called as the flag byte. Though it is a byte, we are concerning the individual bits. So whenever the send, now if this is going to be the delimiter with the same discussion that we had previously, and if this pattern occurs in the frame part, receiver will once again wrongly conclude the end part. And to prevent this, whenever the receiver, the sender should take care that there should not be 6 consecutive ones in the data part or in the frame part. And to remove this part or to prevent this from happening, whenever any frame contains 5 consecutive ones, the sender does not check what is the next bit. It simply stuffs or induces or includes one additional 0 after 5 consecutive ones. So this is the logic. Here USB basically uses bit stuffing. We'll see with one example. Now this is the part which was to be sent from the sender. Now obviously we can see that apart from the first 4 bits, there are many consecutive ones to be sent, and for, as we have just seen the logic, after every 5 consecutive ones, 1 2 3 4 5, a 0 is induced, stuffed. There was no 0 here. So next consecutive 5, 1 0 is induced. Next consecutive 5 bits, 1, next consecutive ones, 1 0 is stuffed. So these are the additional or stuffed zeros which are there in the frame to be sent. Now whenever, from the receiver's perspective, when a frame is received and there is a 0 after 5 consecutive ones, it knows that this was the 0 which was deliberately stuffed by the sender, and that's how it takes out those zeros. So at the receiver, this 0, this 0 and this 0, because they happen to be after 5 consecutive ones, will be taken out, will be discarded, and that's how receiver once again stores in its memory the correct sequence of bits which was sent from the sender. So the beauty of this method is that it rather achieves the same thing which was achieved by the flag bytes with byte stuffing, but with less number of bits being transferred. Now imagine the worst case scenario. Imagine that in the case of byte stuffing, all the, let us say there were 100 bytes to be sent in the frame, and all were the same byte pattern which is there for delimiting. Now for every, for example, flag or escape, so for every such byte, we would have required 100 different escape bytes. So amounting the bits becoming double to be sent. Here, for each individual byte, if there is a the same sequence of 0x7e in the payload part, it will simply add 1 for every 8 bit or 1 byte instead of 8 bits or 1 byte in the case of byte stuffing. Byte stuffing requires 8 bits to be stuffed for a delimiting byte. Bit stuffing requires 1 bit to be stuffed for the flag byte. That is the difference. For 8 bits, it will require only 1 bit, and that's an increase of only 12.5%. So this is how this is more efficient with byte stuffing. The last is physical layer coding violations. Now, this basically is a shortcut used from the physical layer. The logic which is, or the rules which are maintained in the logic of physical layer, they are diluted. That's a shortcut. So, as you know that while sending the bits in the case of physical layer, there may be some codes used to induce deliberate redundancy to prevent errors from happening, so that the receiver can know that there could have been some errors. Some special codes are used. One such code is 4-bit to 5-bit. Means 4 bits of information will be transmitted as 5 bits of information. 4 bits will be transmitted as 5 bits. So 1 bit will be additional. Effectively, in those 5 bits or a sequence of 5 bits, the information will be only 4 bits. So with the 5 bits, the total combinations becomes 32, wherein the usable combinations are only 2 raised to 4, that is 16. So 16 possible combinations or signal possibilities are not used in those 5 bits. So those particular signal combination possibilities, it is assumed that by the rule will never happen in the data part, because they are not meaningful. But these are the 16 combinations which are now used for delimiting the frames, as they couldn't be there in the frame part, as that was the possibility with the previous two methods. These particular combinations, 16 combinations, couldn't be there in the payload part or the data frame part, and that's how these 6 or some of these 16 combinations can be used for limiting or delimiting the frame. This is what is called as coding violations, because we are using reserved signals to indicate the start and end of frames, which is called as coding violations. We are using the reserved signals for indicating something else in the frame itself, which is not to be used rather, and we are using that. So once again, the advantage or the beauty is that the reserved signals couldn't be there into the frames, and that's why there is no need to stuff anything, as was the possibility in the previous two cases. So these are the methods, 4 methods, which are there for framing with the data link layer. Now actually in practice, not a single method, I mean it is not that only a single method is used. There may be a combination of methods used. Many data link protocols basically use a combination. For example, in Ethernet or Wi-Fi, that is 802.11, frames are delimited with a preamble, what is called as a preamble, and that preamble is 72 bits long, where it basically is containing that preamble is then followed by a length field. That preamble basically will be something like flag byte or flag bits pattern, and then it will be adding the byte count method's length field. So it's a combination of flag bit or flag byte with byte count. The next important thing that we are going to introduce here is error control. So the first duty is done, framing is done, but what about the errors in the transmission or when the errors are detected at the recipient? So basically, the data link layer ensures that all frames are delivered to the network layer at the destination and also in proper order. So as you have seen, there are three services possible. In the case of unacknowledged connectionless service, so it's okay that any error is there. Simply the sender is going to pump out the frames without caring for whether they are received or received in the correct way. But if the service is reliable connection oriented service, the receiver or the sender has to take care of whether the frames are received properly and in proper sequence. So that is not okay to ignore the errors. Hence, in the reliable connection oriented service, there is what is called as the feedback. Here, upon the receipt of something or that frame, receiver sends back special control frames indicating that it has received something, that frame. If the sender receiver sends positive acknowledgement, the sender will conclude that the frame was sent or received correctly at the receiver. When there is no feedback, there may be a situation that when the sender sends the frame, it has to know that the frame has been received in a particular predefined way. And for that, there are two things done. First, a timer is started when the frame is sent. So before the timer elapses, the acknowledgement has to come. Acknowledgement may not come in two cases. If the frame was delayed in the transit in the transmission, or if the frame is completely lost in the transition. In any case, before the timer at the center elapses, the receiver is not going to get the frame, and that's why it is not going to give the feedback. So center is not going to get the feedback in the time frame. So this is the timer or the need of timer. And it may so happen that if the frame is delayed somewhere, it couldn't be transmitted in the predefined time, the frame may arrive after that time. And as the sender has not received the feedback, it has simply sent a copy of the same frame. So the two copies which are of the same frame, they may be received at the receiver. So if the frames do not carry any frame sequence number, receiver has no way to tell whether these are the copies of the same frame or these are the two different frames. And that's why the second thing, which is called as the frame sequence number, is kept in the frame, in the header part, so that whenever receiver receives the two copies of the same frame, it can conclude that these are the two frames, one might be delayed somewhere, and that's why it can discard one. So this is the sequence number or need of sequence number. Next is flow control. As we have previously introduced this part, a sender may be on a fast connection and receiver may be on a slower connection. So to remove the problem caused by fast sender to a slow receiver, there are two approaches. Feedback control or flow control is basically used, and there are two approaches for this flow control. One is called as the feedback based flow control, and second is called as the rate based flow control. In the case of feedback based flow control, receiver sends back information to the sender, giving it permission to send more data. So sender is dependent on the receiver. When the receiver acknowledges that I can now receive information, then only sender can send. And for this, the receiver has to send some kind of control frame back. Now, in effect, receiver is telling sender how the receiver is performing at what speed. In the case of rate-based flow control, there is a built-in mechanism that does not allow sender to go beyond a predefined rate. So sender is never expected to go beyond that rate limit, and that's why there is no problem of speed issue at the receiver. Here there will be no explicit feedback from the receiver. So this is how today we have seen the framing in data link layer, the different methods as well as error control and flow control, what they are and how in short they are done. Thank you.